How to speak English better than ever before. Overcome your struggles and speak with confidence. Have you ever felt like no matter how much you study, speaking English still feels hard? You're not alone. Many learners face the same frustration. But here's the good news. You can improve, and it doesn't have to take years. In fact, with the right techniques, you can start speaking better right away. Chapter 1: The Start of the Journey. Have you ever wondered what separates fluent speakers from beginners? It's not about knowing all the words or never making mistakes, because fluent speakers make mistakes all the time. The real difference is confidence. Fluent speakers are confident in their ability to communicate, even when they don't know every word or perfect grammar rule. They don't freeze when they forget a word. They keep going, and that's what makes them sound fluent. Imagine this for a moment. You're in a conversation, and the words just flow. You're not thinking about grammar. You're not hesitating. You're just speaking. That's the goal. But how do you get there? Here's something that might surprise you. Small changes in how you practice can make a huge difference. You don't need to completely change your study routine or learn thousands of new words. Let's dive into why confidence is so important. When you're confident, you're not afraid to make mistakes. You speak freely, and even when you mess up, you learn from it. Each time you practice speaking, you're building both your language skills and your confidence. Here's a quote I love. Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. Winston Churchill. This is especially true for speaking English. The more you speak, the more confident you become, and the more your fluency improves. Now, I know what you might be thinking. What if I don't feel confident yet? Don't worry, that's totally normal. Confidence comes from doing. The more you speak, the better you get, and the more confident you'll feel. So, here's a small challenge to get you started. Set a goal to speak English every day, even if it's just for 5 minutes. You can practice with a friend, a family member, or even by yourself. The key is to start speaking, even if it feels uncomfortable at first. In the next chapters, we're going to break down exactly how you can build confidence and improve your speaking. We'll explore listening techniques, shadowing, repetition, and even some fun ways to practice. But remember, it's not about perfection, it's about making progress. But first, let me share a technique that will help you take your first big step toward fluency. It's something most learners overlook, but it's the secret to improving faster than you think. Chapter 2: The Power of Active Listening. Now that we've talked about building confidence, let's dive into the first key technique that will truly help you speak better. Active listening. You might think that speaking fluently is all about talking, but here's the truth. You can't speak well unless you listen well. Listening is the foundation of fluency. Think about it. When you listen, you're not just hearing words, you're learning how sentences flow, how native speakers connect ideas, and how words are pronounced. When you master listening, speaking becomes easier and more natural. It's like filling your brain with the right tools before you start building. But not just any listening will do. You need to practice active listening. This means you don't just let the words pass by, you focus on them, break them down, and absorb how they're used. Here's an example. When you're listening to a podcast, a story, or even a conversation, pay attention to how the speaker structures their sentences. Are they using short phrases or long sentences? How do they pronounce certain words? How do they express their ideas? Active listening means noticing these details and learning from them. One of the best ways to practice active listening is through shadowing. Shadowing is a technique where you listen to a speaker and immediately repeat what they say. It's like being their shadow, following their words as closely as you can. Shadowing is an incredibly powerful way to improve both your listening and speaking at the same time. Here's how you can practice shadowing. Choose a podcast or story. Pick something that's not too long or difficult. You can find great stories and podcasts for beginners on Learn English by Stories. Listen carefully. Start by listening to a short sentence or phrase. Pay attention to the speaker's rhythm, tone, and pronunciation. Pause and repeat. As soon as the speaker finishes a sentence, pause the audio and repeat what they said, trying to match their speed and intonation. Keep going, repeating this process for a few minutes each day. Over time, you'll notice your pronunciation and fluency improving. The key here is that shadowing helps you get used to speaking without overthinking. You're not translating in your head, you're simply repeating what you hear. This builds fluency naturally. Don't worry about being perfect. You're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. Maybe you'll miss a word or mispronounce something. The goal is not perfection, it's to get comfortable speaking without hesitation. The more you shadow, the more fluent you'll become. Let me tell you about a student of mine, Emily. She was really shy about speaking English. She was afraid of making mistakes, so she rarely spoke at all. I introduced her to shadowing, and it completely transformed her learning experience. She started practicing by repeating sentences from podcasts. At first, she struggled, but after just a few weeks, she noticed that her sentences flowed more easily. Shadowing helped Emily build confidence, and soon, she was speaking without fear. Here's a quote by Stephen Covey that fits perfectly here. Most people do not listen with the intent to understand, they listen with the intent to reply. Active listening teaches you to truly understand. And when you understand, speaking becomes much easier. But here's where things get interesting. Active listening and shadowing are just the beginning. There's another technique that will help take your fluency even further, and it's all about repetition. Chapter 3, the repetition technique. So far, we've discussed the power of active listening and shadowing. Now let's move on to a technique that might sound simple, but it's incredibly effective. Repetition. You might wonder, why is repeating things so important? The answer is simple. Repetition is how your brain learns to speak fluently without hesitation. Think of it like this. When you repeat words and phrases, you're training your brain to remember them quickly. The more you repeat, the more natural the words feel. Eventually, you'll be able to say them without even thinking. It's just like learning how to ride a bike or memorizing a song. You practiced over and over until it became second nature. Speaking English is no different. Fluency isn't just about knowing a lot of words, it's about being able to use the words you know quickly and easily. Repetition helps you reach the point where you don't have to stop and think about grammar or vocabulary. You just speak. Let me tell you about another student of mine, Liam. Liam knew a lot of English words, but he often hesitated when speaking because he had to think about what to say. I introduced him to the repetition technique, and every day, Liam would pick 5 common phrases in English and repeat each one 5 times. At first, it seemed boring, but after just a week, he noticed something amazing. He could say those phrases easily and without hesitation. Repetition had worked its magic. Here's how you can use repetition to improve your speaking. Repeat common phrases. Start by picking phrases you use often, like, "How are you?" or "What's your name?" Repeat these phrases out loud multiple times. This helps your brain get used to saying them quickly. Use the mirror technique. Stand in front of a mirror and say the same sentence 5 times. Watch your mouth move, focus on your pronunciation, and get used to seeing yourself speak English. This technique improves fluency and builds confidence because it feels like you're practicing with someone else. Shadowing plus repetition. Combine shadowing with repetition for double the impact. After you shadow a sentence, repeat it on your own. This turns what you hear into what you can say with ease. Record yourself. Choose a short passage from a podcast or story, read it aloud, and record yourself. Then, listen to the recording and repeat the sentences again. This lets you track your progress over time and see how much more fluent you've become. Small steps, big progress. Start small. Pick simple sentences like, "I'm going to the store," or "Can you help me?" and practice them daily. Small, consistent practice will lead to big improvements in your fluency. The key here is, repetition doesn't mean being boring. You can mix it up. Practice the same sentence in different contexts, like pretending you're talking to a friend or ordering food at a restaurant. Repetition helps you build confidence, and when you're confident,